Geoff Wilson, the sports card investor, has honestly just come out with one of his most delusional, if not most delusional statement that we've seen to date. It relates to a YouTube comment he left on somebody's channel and once again relates to this whole Star Jordan situation. Now, this would normally not be something that I flag in a video specifically, but given that it relates to the Star Jordans and we've touched on them so many times in the last week or so, I really wanted to talk about it because it once again adds another notch in the belt of how ridiculous this guy can actually be. Now, before I get into the comment specifically, I want to re-highlight some of the things I've touched on in the last few days. I'm not going to recap these things in detail, so if you've missed my videos, please check them out, in particular this one from 3 days ago. The long story short is, Geoff came out in an Instagram reel, this one over here, talking about the fact he made a $144,000 profit on a PSA 8 Star Jordan 1984, the 101. Turns out it wasn't his profit, right? Because he was just referencing the fact that a card sold on Goldin for 244 grand, the 144 profit being unrealized because he bought his copy for 100 grand. Now, this story became pretty laughable pretty quickly because Geoff basically forgot to tell people the copy he was referencing, the copy he was alleging to have made 144k profit on, unrealized profit, he had actually sold months earlier. We sort of got that information when he did this video over here and he showed the card in question. Turns out it had a different serial number to the one he bought for 100 grand. A lot of confusion there, obviously, guys, but please check out this video because you'll get the detail then. But one of those ones that was pretty laughable, and Geoff essentially had egg on his face. And I grilled him pretty hard in that video because it's ridiculous, the fact that he was sort of coming out and talking about the fact he made an unrealized profit, yet the card he was referencing he no longer owned, right? That screams, it reeks, it stinks of market manipulation, and many people sort of were saying that in the comments. Now, I'm not going to say that is exactly what is happening, but when you've got a situation where you're claiming a profit on a card that you no longer own, you can sort of understand why people feel that way. And sort of the more information that was coming to light, the more questions that were being asked. And that's sort of where today's story relates, because it does relate to that reel that Geoff made. Once again, this one over here. What sort of happened in the days preceding that was basically Cage Lawyer came out and made an Instagram reel saying that the card Geoff was claiming a profit on, the unrealized profit, was actually removed from Card Ladder's sales history, meaning the sale was never paid for. It was voided, nothing went ahead. So these guys from an 84 star perspective were pumping up a fake sale. Now, what became more interesting was that the Card Ladder guys host a show, I think it's once a week, called The Crossover, and Ken Goldin actually dialed in because he wanted to understand what the heck was happening. From his perspective, from Ken's perspective, you know, it was paid for on Goldin. They had a bit of a back and forth here. I won't play it for you, but it's an interesting watch if you haven't seen it. Ken ended up staying on for a long time. But the long story short was Ken was basically going to provide proof to the Card Ladder guys that the sale should be added back in because it was paid for, it was shipped. Now, where this sort of got interesting was that the Card Ladder guys had come out and said that the source for the card not being paid for had actually come from somebody that worked at Goldin directly, i.e. a whistleblower of some sorts, which is obviously pretty spicy to hear about, to read about, and maybe talk to some underlying market manipulation issues at some of these platforms, because that's obviously been a concern for a long time. When you're seeing some of these record sales on these auction sites, you never really know if they are in fact paid for or not. PWCC has a fairly significant issue when it comes to this. It's fairly systemic at this point, where you've got auctions that are being shield bid that are not being paid for, but are staying in their sales history for long periods of time. So when you've got a situation like this, where somebody that works for the company has come out to the Card Ladder guys and said, guess what, you need to remove this thing because it's not paid for and we have proof, you sort of buy into that sort of stuff, right? Because it's well within what is already happening within this industry. So that's an interesting point in of itself, the fact that you had a whistleblower come forward and then Ken jumping on a live stream and actually being caught off guard. The person who reached out to them was from Goldin. But to give Ken credit, to give the Card Ladder guys credit, they talked about it on live stream and they've now vouched and verified the sale was in fact paid for, and it's now listed back in Card Ladder's platform. The thing that's sort of interesting with this whole piece is Geoff Wilson's response to the situation. Now, this is a video from Simon466 Cards. Please give him a subscribe. He put out a video talking through the Instagram live stream where Ken jumped on and basically was asking questions to the Card Ladder guys for why they took the sale down. Now, again, you can watch this in your own time. But where things got interesting, and Sports Card Radio actually referenced this themselves, is this reply over here from the Sports Card Investor YouTube account. He says that I have a strong hunch the real reason why Card Ladder removed the sale is because They wanted to get back at me for hyping the sale up. Like that is ridiculous, right? He then goes on to say, I believe they removed the sale and then immediately alerted Cage Lawyer to do an attack video on me based on the sale being removed, which he did and is now deleted. This is not the first time they have done this type of thing multiple times in the past. This is literally the most absurd and delusional thing I can probably ever see from Geoff Wilson. What he's sort of implying here is that these guys, these card letter guys, are prepared to put their company branding, their company name on the line just so they can go ahead and make fun of him because he came out and flexed ridiculously in this video over here. I think that's so absurd. Like, guys, you need to remember as well that the card letter guys are actually owned by collectors, the company that owns PSA. They're not going to risk their name for something as ridiculous as that, right? Geoff, in his comment, is essentially saying they did this to make fun of him. They did this to get back at him because he was hyping up the card. They did this to sort of discredit him. They did this to embarrass him. But it's like, mate, that is so far from the truth, because why would they have to do all that to embarrass you? Why would they have to risk their branding, risk their name, risk the integrity of their company when you yourself have embarrassed yourself with this reel in of itself? I said self there a lot, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. Your reel embarrassed you, and they didn't need to do anything about that because you were in this video claiming an unrealized profit. You didn't sell your card, but you made it out like you did. Turns out the card you were referencing, you had actually sold months earlier, if not in 2023. I'm getting mixed reports, but you didn't disclose that. So you made yourself look dumb there too. You didn't tell people that the copy you now own is a different copy. You haven't disclosed what you actually bought the replacement for or what you sold the copy for, which is so delusional and hilarious that you think they're coming out to get you and make fun of you when you're doing that all yourself. They don't actually have to do anything to embarrass you because you're embarrassing yourself. You're so delusional. And when you've got people out here coming at you, and some stuff is unjust with how people make fun of you and all that sort of thing, but it's like, mate, you're doing yourself no bloody favors. What do you expect people to do when you do something as dumb as this? Like, again, it's just a comment, but that's what you guys need to understand from a mindset perspective, is that it's not just a comment. This guy is delusional. So if he's getting this offended by somebody making an Instagram reel about him and then thinking a company is going to go against their integrity, go against their ethics to get back at him, it's like, mate, you're not that important. You're not that big of a deal. The world does not revolve around you. You know, yes, could the card letter of guys had beef with you and they thought this was also a win-win. They could remove it and then also make you look bad. Maybe they wanted to do that, but to think they sort of only took this thing down to make fun of you is insane. Especially when they're coming out in a live stream talking about the fact that they have a source from Goldin directly. They're not going to do that unless they have receipts, because they're about integrity, or should be about integrity. So just one of those ones that I think is just hilarious and just once again highlights how out of touch Geoff is with a lot of things. Like, mate, how thin is your skin? You are a multi-millionaire. You can afford to be spending millions of dollars on cards. You have, you know, a really big YouTube channel. You have now a card store. You now have, you know, market movers, all these things that you should be really happy about. Yet you're letting people on the internet sort of affect you that much. It's like, mate, pull your head in, honestly. I don't know what else to say. I just think it's beyond hilarious and absurd that you think you're that, you know, important. And obviously, you know, it's all about the internet, getting people to talk about you and all that kind of thing. But I don't think that is the case with him. I think he means what he said there. And, you know, I'm keen to hear what you guys have to say down below. I just think it's, you know, hilarious. I don't know what else there is to say. It's like, people don't need to try very hard to make you look bad, Geoff. And, you know, I wouldn't say I've been a defender of his in the past. I've definitely been someone that remains balanced. I do that all the time. But like I said in the last video, you're doing all these things. You're not helping yourself. Like, you can't blame people when you do dumb stuff like this. And you certainly can't blame them when you are as out of touch as this. So I'm rambling now. This went for a heck of a lot longer than what I thought. I just thought this was a really important one to touch on because it goes to the things we've talked about, you know, in those recent videos. Again, to recap, we've talked about the Star Jordan 3 times in my last 3 videos. You guys are probably sick of it by now. I'm sick of talking about it. I wasn't going to talk about it again today. I had another story lined up regarding tops, but we touched on it because it basically all relates into the same theme. You've got this guy at the forefront being out of touch, talking about these cards. You then have one of these cards that he referenced get taken down, then put back up, and this guy thinks it's all about him. I just think it's, you know, absurd. And I think you guys, like always, need to be keeping an open mind when it comes to cards like this and sort of what is being reported by these websites as well, because you don't actually know when and where things might get taken down and for what reason. It's a dangerous game out there. Just spend within your means, have fun with the hobby as always, and you guys will be fine. So, thank you for watching. Or actually, very quickly, in the last video, you would have seen me show off some, Falcon and the Winter Soldier hobby boxes. I bought 5 and actually ripped them the other night and hit an auto that I think is pretty damn cool, and it's GSP. So this is actually the equal second hardest single auto you can pull. It's like 1 in 16,000 packs. So maybe I'm finally getting some loaded boxes like some of these other influencers, but pretty damn happy with that. He was in the show. I think he was also in the Winter Soldier film. But out of all the autos to get, aside from Anthony Mackie, who plays the Falcon, Sebastian Stan, who plays the Winter Soldier, this is probably the one you wanted. I'm a huge UFC fan, so I was super excited to have pulled this. And like I said, it's 1 in 16,000 packs apparently. The autos that are more common, that are like 1 in 100, are the random actors you never want to hit. They're like $5 autos. So, pretty damn stoked to get that. And like I said, ripping boxes of that value are so good these days. It's so rare to find hobby boxes that are affordable and have fun. And I'm just fortunate that I got a pretty cool hit. Probably the best hit I've ever pulled myself. So anyway, I'm rambling. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.